This is my Hornby J52 tank engine. This particular locomotive was acquired in the East Coast Pullman train set by Hornby. A B12 also accompanies this locomotive with the set. Unfortunately, it cannot join us today as it is in the works, having a few repairs done to it. This is a very, very reliable locomotive. It's a good little thing just for getting things shunted around and moved around, and it's been very, very reliable. It is chipped by default, obviously because it comes in a DCC set. With, I think it's a Hornby 8-pin decoder. I haven't opened it up to have a look. I have applied some weathering effects to the buffers. I have added some buffer grease, if I just zoom into that. As you can see, I've sort of faded it out towards the middle where the buffers would actually make contact with the other buffers, and the grease has sort of accumulated on the outside of the buffer. This particular locomotive is also in LNER black livery. It is number 3972, is averagely detailed with medium tension lock couplings, but can also be replaced with small tension locks if you so desire. But having it with medium tension lock couplings just gives it a bit of diversity, because you would expect this locomotive to be shunting various things such as carriages with small tension locks and goods wagons with very, very big tension lock couplers. So it's handy to have the medium tension lock couplers. And this is a very, very reliable locomotive, and I would recommend the set as a whole, as you do get quite a lot for your money. Here we have an LNER B12, which goes by the number of 8556. It has no name, and unfortunately this train has been reduced to a static attraction for the time being, as I am having a bit of trouble with the decoder that is inside the locomotive, and there is a nut missing from one of the wheels. That is down to me. I have lost that by accident. As a whole, I would not recommend this locomotive. I'm not sure if it's sold individually, as this did come with the East Coast Pullman train set. It is very poorly detailed. There is detail here and there, such as handrails, but there isn't hardly any detail on the front buffer beam. There is a little bit of paintwork throughout the locomotive. There is no cab detail. The coal is moulded and therefore is not removable. There are no sprung buffers. You usually get big tension lock couplings with this, but as you can see, I have fitted some small tension lock couplings just using some super glue. This locomotive has been very, very unreliable for me. I have cared for it in the best way possible, but it still seems to let me down in terms of reliability. I am a little bit disappointed, but a little bit of tender loving care should bring it back up to scratch, and I hope to see this locomotive back in service within the next couple of months. This is my Hornby Class A4 Pacific. This locomotive goes by the number of 60027 and also has a name. Her name is Merlin. This was my very first A4 Pacific, and to be more specific, my very first super detail locomotive, and was very, very impressed by the overall package. This locomotive was acquired when I was first getting back into the hobby, and so I was absolutely blown away by the level of detail that was included with this particular locomotive. I purchased this locomotive for around £150 at Model Zone, which is no longer with us. Rest in peace, Model Zone. But yes, this locomotive, it's a Hornby A4, so there's not much that needs to be said about it in terms of reliability. You do get a 5-pole motor. It is loco drive. Almost all locos are nowadays. So it's capable of pulling the best part of 10 to 12 coaches. You can also add extra weight to it yourself if you so desire, if you can find space and weights that are small enough to fit inside. In terms of reliability, this loco has been very, very good. Like I say, it's a Hornby A4, so they are very, very reliable. My only complaint about this particular locomotive is this is subject to debate. The decoder, the Hornby 8-pin decoder, does go in the tender, and so that means instead of having to open up the locomotive and disconnect most of the valve gear, all you need to do is just open up the tender. However, it does come with a little bit of a catch, because there is a little plug that plugs into the back of the tender, and that is very, very fiddly, and you are prone to break things off if you do not have the right equipment. When I say the right equipment, I am referring to the Pico servicing cradle, which helps with this action tremendously, and I could not recommend it enough, because I think this is going to be accessory is going to become universal. with Hornby steam locomotives, I think. And so get yourself a Pico service cradle while you can, because it will save you damaging the locomotive quite considerably. Obviously, because I was an amateur at the time, I ended up breaking the tender, and stupidly I super glued it back together. So if this loco does encounter decoder trouble, I'm going to have to order a brand new tender, and I need to get that done because Hornby decoders aren't the best from what I've heard, but hey, we can only hope for some good reliability. This is my Hornby Class 7P. This particular locomotive goes by the number of 45512 and also has a name. Her name is Bunsen. Now this is a very, very attractive locomotive. It is also weathered, which adds to the already tremendous amount of detail. When I say tremendous amount of detail, I say that because of the price. This locomotive was acquired for, guess, this locomotive was acquired for £75, and my god, it was an absolute bargain, because Hornby have done an absolutely outstanding job on the detail. Now I have no idea what the recommended retail price is for this particular locomotive, but I'd assume it is quite high, and I think I bagged myself a bargain when I bought this locomotive. However, the problem caught up with me when I got home. I tried to fit a decoder, and with it being not a very modern Hornby design, the decoder did have to go in the locomotive itself, where the motor is located. Now, unfortunately, I did encounter a little bit of trouble, because the motor wasn't making contact with the gears properly, and so I was having a lot of trouble trying to get this loco running. Obviously, because I was an amateur at the time, I did struggle to fix this problem, but I did get there in the end. And this locomotive does run like an absolute dream now. She's very, very reliable indeed. I have no complaints about her whatsoever. Like I say, the only complaint is her reliability when I first got her, but that was mainly down to me because I was an amateur at the time, and this is a super detail model, so I got what I deserved, really. But hey, it all comes down to experience, and she's definitely paid me back. And as you can see, she does just by looking at her. She's a very, very attractive locomotive. This is my Hornby Great Western Castle class locomotive. This particular locomotive bears the number of 7034 and also bears the name of Inns Castle. This is what the Great Western Castles would have looked like if they were in their BR era, with the 2,500 gallon tender, rather opposed to the 4,000 gallon tender ones, which were being phased in as steam was being ruled out, which was a little bit silly. This particular locomotive was acquired at Heswell Road. 53A models, and this locomotive has given me no trouble whatsoever. However, as you saw, because it didn't roll in, it is a static attraction at the moment, for I have had to nick the decoder out of it for it to go in the DVT for testing, and that is successful, and I'm hoping to acquire another decoder for this locomotive very soon. Now, this locomotive did cost me, I think it was £100, and that is an absolute bargain for a locomotive like this. You do get a lot for your money. There is a lot of detail. I have done a review on this particular locomotive, as I have done many of my other locomotives as well. But the main inspiration for acquiring this locomotive was steam locomotives in profile. I'm sure many of you know what it is. If you don't know what it is, just type it into the search bar now and watch it after this video. But it is an absolutely fantastic series which just goes into depth about steam locomotives, talks about their heyday, their problems, and what they were best at, and how many survivors there are, obviously. Now, you do get a lot for your money. There is a lot of detail included in this particular locomotive. This has given me no problems whatsoever. However, similar to Merlin, she does have the plug which plugs into the tender, which obviously means the decoder goes in the tender. Now, that's a big relief, because there is a lot of complicated valve gear to disconnect on the Great Western Castle, so I'm very, very relieved I haven't had to do that. And I've got no regrets about buying this locomotive whatsoever. It's a very, very smooth runner, and I would highly recommend this locomotive to anybody who's a fan of the Great Western Railway, or just trains in general. This is my beloved Hornby Sir Nigel Gresley, and she is my favourite locomotive of all time. However, she is different to the variant which I do prefer, which is the British Rail version in British Rail Express Passenger Blue and without the valances. But nevertheless, I am really happy I have got my hands on this super rare locomotive. This was to commemorate, I think it was the 25th anniversary of the Hornby 00, Sir Nigel Gresley, which was the old metal version. And so they released this version, obviously going by the name of Sir Nigel Gresley, and 4498 on the tender. This particular locomotive was acquired at the Pickering Model Shop, obviously just outside Pickering Station, for a bargain, £80, when you could expect to see an A4 like this on the market for 150. And the most amazing thing is that this is actually more detailed than the A4s you could buy today from Hornby. The tender has more detail, therefore meaning it has a lot more detail. She also has cylinder cocks, the little gold things you can see just below the front of the valances. But obviously, with it being £80, it did come with a catch. This locomotive did not come with a box, and so has no box. It just came in a bright blue box and just said Sir Nigel Gresley on the front. And so I had to take extreme care when bringing it home. And there are a few broken bits as well. There are a few broken lamp irons. The front right, the middle, and the top middle as well is also broken. But they're not really noticeable. And nevertheless, the locomotive is absolutely gorgeous. Now, I haven't had her for long and cannot really give her a comment in terms of reliability. I can tell you, however, that she did have some bent valve gear. And actually, that's a little bit of a fib. She still does have the bent valve gear. Now, it's lasting for now, and I do have some spare valve gear ready to go on, but she is quite... she does run quite a lot, and so... it's only when the valve gear goes that I'm going to consider replacing it. I'm considering doing a guide on replacing valve gear as well, because people think it's a really, really difficult job to do, but with appropriate lighting and a steady hand, it's very, very easy indeed, as I have done many replacements in the past before. I would highly recommend this locomotive if you can get your hands on it. You can also acquire just a normal Hornby Blue A4, and you can order some nameplates off certain websites. I can't name the websites because of copyright reasons, but I'm happy to supply you with a link in the description if you so desire to check them out. Yeah, absolutely amazing locomotive, my favourite locomotive of all time. Get one if you can. This is my Hornby National Railway Museum Flying Scotsman, and she speaks for herself. To me, and many other people, she is considered royalty. And for her to be 76 times smaller and running on my layout just makes it an absolute honour for her to be here. This locomotive was acquired at the National Railway Museum in York for the full price of £115. Yep. £115 for something like this, and she is absolutely drop dead stunningly gorgeous. I cannot sum it up even better. I love her to bits, mainly because she is a blast from the past. My granddad first got me into locomotives. The main contributor to getting me into the hobby when I was young was this particular locomotive, and seeing her at Malton Level Crossing going past at high speed. And this is exactly how I remember her, with the double chimney and the German smoke deflectors. Yes, she's not supposed to be in LNER livery if she has those features, but that's just how we all like her, I think. Now, I haven't had her for very long, so once again, I cannot comment on her reliability, but she's given me no problems as of yet. I'm really, really picky about the detail on Flying Scotsman, and she had the incorrect valve gear. And so I carried out a replacement, and it looks much, much better now. and I cannot recommend this model enough. The only complaint I have is the little overhead warning stickers, but I'm sure if you're brave enough, you can always paint over those if you so desire. You can also fit this locomotive with a double smoke generator if you so desire. You know, it will consume quite a lot of amps, but I'm sure when you see it working, it will be worth it. This also is a limited edition of 2000. Mine was number 592. I was hoping it would be 1999, but obviously that wasn't the case. But nevertheless, I'm really thrilled to bits to have one of these on my layout, and cannot wait to see the real thing running in real life, if it ever does. Now, there's a lot of people out there that seem to think I'm all steam, and that certainly is not the case, as shown here by this Jambe Mark III DVT. This is an unpowered piece of rolling stock. It is fitted with a Jambe 8-pin decoder, and this will eventually be paired with the Class 91, which is being returned from Intercity 82 from its major overhaul and conversion to DCC and addition of lights. This is a replacement for the original DVT that came with the Class 91. That was the Mark IV DVT, and that was made in the late 1980s, so obviously it's not going to have lights and it's not going to be very well detailed. This, yes, it is a Mark III DVT, but it is very, very similar to a Mark IV DVT, and I can make a lot of easy modifications to it to make it look like a Mark IV DVT. One of which has already been carried out. There was a little sun visor, if you like, in front of the windscreen. That has been removed. There are several holes that are still white, and those will eventually be painted with the yellow. And this was acquired for £50 at the Pickering Model Shop, and I can say it's well worth the money, especially since it's in this livery, Intercity livery, and these things are absolutely chuffing rare. I remember seeing one of these in the Pickering Model Shop when I went there in person, and suddenly I decided to invest in my Class 91 and start, well, making it run again and make it look like a proper Class 91. So I had to invest in a new DVT, because obviously the old DVT would not cut it in terms of detail and running. So I phoned them up and asked for this DVT and purchased it for £50. Now, unfortunately, it came broken. So I had to send that back, but it's come back and it's as good as new, and it works just fine. As we can see, we've got some gorgeous sprung buffers, and we've got some electrical cabling at the front if you wanted to connect to, say, another DVT or some of the coaches. The doors do open as well. That's a bonus. I'll show you. Fingers in the way there. So the doors do open. That's a very nice bonus. And you do have an interior cab light as well. Let me just show you the tail lights quickly. And then we have the tail lights as well, so it's going to look very, very good running at night, especially when it's paired with the Class 91, and that should be returned soon from His Majesty Intercity 82. In addition to the DVT, I also have purchased two brand new Mark IV coaches. These have also had their wheels replaced, as these are also from the 1980s. The Mark IVs are pretty scarce nowadays, so if you want to invest in a new Class 91 rake, buy it now. In total, I need about 9 coaches to complete the rake. I have 2, and there's 2 also with Intercity 82, and they should be coming back soon. So I should have a 4-coach rake, and there's plenty more coaches off eBay on the way.